The 2023 Acura Integra poses a bit of an existential question. Does the transmission make the car? Now, I'm sure most of you out there would agree that the answer is usually no. But what happens when you add the sort of Mandela effect that comes with a car like this one? Because the minute Acura announced the Integra was coming back, expectations were set sky high for a heavy-hitting sport compact car. And the reality is, I don't think it was fair back then, and I still don't today. Now, back when Jody drove the Integra, she was left feeling disappointed, mostly because of those same expectations. And that's why I'm here today to set the record straight, and I think I might have the right transmission to do it. For more expert car reviews, don't forget to share our channel and subscribe so you can catch some of this and maybe even a little of that. Look, before we get into the nitty-gritty here, I do want to clear things up. I'm not here to dunk on anyone with fond memories of quick Integras from back in the day. I grew up in the Fast and the Furious era too, and as much as I don't like those movies, I do get it. There are also spicy versions of old Integras, just like there's a spicy one of this one coming up with that new Type S that's going to use the Honda Civic Type R's powertrain. Very much looking forward to that car, and you should be too. But this ain't it. I hate to break it to you. And if you had expectations of that, well, they were wrong from the jump. That is just the reality of the situation. Because keep in mind, this is much more of a successor to the Acura ILX than it is a reincarnation of the RSX. And I know a bunch of people out there were hoping that the new Integra was going to be a coupe. That's just silly. Come on, man. Nobody buys those anymore. It wouldn't have sold. This one at least has a chance of sticking around for a little bit in spite of the move to crossovers, okay? So Acura gave this car a fighting chance, and it also gave it a pretty solid powertrain considering this isn't the sport compact version. Yes, it is based on the Honda Civic Si, but also keep in mind that this is an entry-level luxury car more than it is a sport compact. And every single one of those, even though there aren't many left, well, they have some sporting intentions. It's just not their main reason for being, and that's very much true here. But let's not even get to that Honda Civic Si stuff yet, and let's just talk about it as an entry-level luxury car. I think it's pretty good. If you take a look at the Mercedes A220 or the Audi A3, this thing stacks up, even if you're not talking about this elite A-spec trim that I'm driving. It's got the stuff you'd want: heated front seats, heated steering wheel, touchscreen infotainment, all kinds of advanced safety goodies, which, by the way, don't come standard in either of those two. So that gives this thing a clear advantage. And then something else that gives it an advantage is when you talk about this elite A-spec version, because you can get it with a manual transmission, and Mercedes doesn't make them anymore. Can't get that Audi A3 or the S3 with a stick shift. So let's give Acura some credit for sticking this 6-speed in the Integra, and it's a pretty good one too. Now, I wouldn't say it's perfect, at least to my preferences. Not ideal. I don't like the combination of how short the clutch pedal is, as well as how high the point of engagement is. And I know that might sound like a bit of a strange combination, and that's because it is. Now, it's not as if that point of engagement is vague at all. It's very well defined. It's just not my preferred clutch pedal. But everything else about it, very good, including this pretty solid auto rev match system that, if you don't want to heel and toe, or you can't, this does a damn good job of doing it for you. Now, Acura did go the Mazda route with the MX-5. If you want this 6-speed manual, yeah, you can only get it in the top trim, but it's the same price. It's a no-charge option as the CVT. I have not driven the Integra with the continuously variable transmission. That's the one that Jody drove that she wasn't so thrilled with, and I get it. She also said to me that a CVT just isn't becoming of a premium vehicle, But I do think there's more to it than that. And she did briefly drive this one the other day, and she really liked it. She said it changed her perception of the car entirely. But I gotta say, I don't think everything about this car comes down to the transmission, because again, this powertrain is pretty good on its own. Now, it's a 1.5 liter turbocharged 4-cylinder. Like I said, the same one as the Civic Si. It makes the same 200 horsepower, 192 pound-feet of torque. Might not seem like a ton, but trust me, it is, especially when you take a look at the A220 and the A3. Now, both of those make more torque than this. They make 221 pound-feet, but horsepower, pretty close, and it's nice and peppy. All that torque comes online at just 1,800 RPM, which means it is really rev happy. There's also a limited slip differential when you go with this manual version, which I love to see, and you can really feel it putting the power down, just clawing away at that asphalt when you get your foot into it. Let's be real, a day like today, not ideal for driving a front-wheel drive performance-ish car, but with that limited slip diff, like I said, it really helps get the power down. There's also not a ton of understeer. Yeah, there's some. This is front-wheel drive, and it makes 192 pound-feet of torque, but it's not crazy. Again, credit that limited slip diff. And then otherwise, stuff like the adaptive dampers, they do a really good job of keeping the body under control, although I would say almost too good, because even in the comfort mode, they're a little stiff. I know I'm complaining about something that maybe I shouldn't be, but I don't really like that there isn't just a slightly softer setting. That's something I prefer even when I'm doing some spirited driving. I like to really lean into the suspension, and you can't do that so much here. And speaking of those adaptive dampers, that is one of the big differentiators between this thing and the Civic Si. There's also stuff like a built-in Wi-Fi hotspot that, yes, you have to subscribe to, as well as a head-up display. Now, is that enough to justify the $8,000 price difference between this and the Civic Si? Because the cheapest one of these, it's going to cost you 45 grand or so before tax, as long as you don't get any accessories like this light up emblem on the grille, these illuminated door sills, the black badges, stuff like that. If you don't get any of that, you're looking at about 45 grand before tax. And no, none of that stuff is really going to add up to that $8,000 price difference. But again, I don't really think that's the point, because this doesn't compete with the Civic Si. I don't think a lot of people are going to be cross-shopping them. I think you're going to take a look at this next to an A3 or an A220, both of which can cost significantly more, especially when you add similar options like the advanced safety suites that aren't standard in those cars, but they are here. That to me is a big sell. I also got to say, this upholstery, not only do I love the way it looks, totally fooled me. I didn't know until I looked at the spec sheet that this is fake suede and fake leather. I thought it was real. I really like the way it looks, and yeah, this kind of looks like a Civic in here, but not only is that not an insult, because the Civic has a great cabin, but I think this looks different enough. My only real complaint, it is very noisy in here. Not just engine and exhaust, that kind of stuff. I'm talking road noise, and the winter tires on this tester, well, obviously, they only make it worse, but I do think that this car has what it needs to compete with that Audi and that Mercedes-Benz, and that is way more important than the stuff it shares with the Civic Si. And then getting back to this transmission, I don't know. I really do think it's a bit of a placebo effect that it makes the car so much better. Again, haven't driven the CVT. Yeah, they do get chided a lot for not being great. I've insulted them in the past. But if everything else is here, the suspension, the engine, you know, all the good stuff, the chassis, it's really good and tight, what more could you ask for? Again, keeping in mind that this is an entry-level luxury vehicle. I don't know, but to me, it's just really good. I actually do really like this car. I think the insults, I think all of the beef with this thing, totally ill-placed. Wrong place, wrong time. Yeah, that Type S version is going to be good, but this thing's good in its own rights too. To recap, I like that you can even buy one of these with a manual transmission in the first place. The red upholstery I thought was the real deal, and the way the Integra performs as an entry-level luxury vehicle. I don't like that it's noisy inside or that the adaptive dampers aren't just a smidge softer, but honestly, it's hard to find stuff to complain about. Forget the Civic Si for a second and ask yourself a simple question. Are we better off with the Integra back on the market? I think the answer is a resounding yes. And now consider the fact that Acura was bold enough to build one with a manual transmission, and I say this is a car we should be celebrating instead of finding things to complain about.